Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, I think we're at the place where can we look at moral victories? Because I think the Lakers got one on Saturday. Maybe it's time to look at them. The Lakers get through the trade deadline. LeBron James passes a slightly made up but still impressive milestone. All of that coming up and more on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. Get this thing up for you as early as we possibly can. Try making another Locked On podcast your second listen of every day. No matter where you get your podcasts, we got all this Lakers stuff covered for you. We'll get to a slightly manufactured but still impressive LeBron James milestone, which he reached on Saturday. And then obviously, Andy, the Goran Dragic buyout market news is percolating. We'll get to that. I mentioned though in the open, the Lakers, maybe we have reached a place where moral victories are worth looking at, because actual victories aren't, there's only a limited amount of space where like real victories are going to move them around in the standings. They are a full 5.5 games behind Denver to get up to the 6th and get out of the play-in tournament. They would have to jump over the Clippers and Timberwolves to do that. Meanwhile, while they're only a game and a half behind the Clippers for the 8th spot, the Clippers got some bad news this weekend with Norman Powell now being out indefinitely, who they just acquired. So that actually could help the Lakers jump from 9 to 8, and that matters. They're 4 games, though, behind Minnesota to get up to the 7. So, I mean, they're going to be an 8 or a 9 almost surely. And at this point, Andy, it seems to me that all that matters is how are they playing? Are they getting better? Are they playing better? And to that extent, Saturday was a positive development, I thought, for the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really believe, Brian, in all honesty, in the concept of moral victories, however they get defined or whatever at this level. I mean, it's big boy basketball and you lost, but maybe it was a morale victory. If you, I mean, I'm being serious.
I understand.
If you want to think about this,
morale
if you want to think
matters.
Morale does matter, particularly with this team, because the morale had been god awful leading up to the trade deadline. And we can talk about this. We had actually, theorized that maybe getting past the trade deadline could have a positive effect on this team, because everybody would recognize, for better or for worse, hopefully the former, this is the team. And you remove any ambiguity about it, and maybe it creates some resolve for these guys. So, but either way, though, I don't think about it in terms of like, again, moral victory to me always has felt like, even if it's not how you meant it, it's always felt to me like you're trying to almost talk yourself into the idea of a win. They lost,
right?
But you can, championship teams play well and they lose at times. I mean, just sports works that way. This was a game where, on balance, they played pretty well. And in terms of just looking at them as a team, how did they perform as a team with a set purpose and trying to execute a set goal? This was the best that they have looked in a long time during this 117-115 loss to the Warriors. ABC primetime. So if nothing else, maybe they exposed themselves a little bit to some audiences who'd already given up on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's and to your point, like all I meant is that they have lost so much, because I agree with you about the notion of moral victories. They've lost so much that they've reached a place where winning and losing, they have very little wiggle room in their where they can finish. They're really almost certainly going to be an 8 or a 9. And again, there's a big difference between 8 and 9, win once versus win twice to get in. But like the days of thinking, okay, if they get rolling, they could be a 5 seed or a 6 seed or a 4 seed. Like that ship has long since sailed. And they need to start feeling better about themselves and how they're playing, and have a better sort of objective kind of scale of like, okay, that was a decent, competent basketball game. And I thought on Saturday against Golden State, missing Draymond and all this. I'm not saying Golden State's quaking in their boots for what might be a first round matchup, depending on how things go. They looked competent. They looked like a competent team playing a very good team. And that is a major change. And they looked competent while LeBron and while AD were not particularly good. Like if this was game one of the playoffs, Lakers fans would be like, oh, they lost by 2. LeBron was 1 for 10 in the fourth quarter. AD was barely there after the first. Like we got a lot to feel good about. Like that's totally normal reaction. That's what that game felt like to me.
This was the rare game, Brian, where you could argue that Russell Westbrook and several members of the supporting cast, when you lay out expectations and what is reasonably needed and expected from each guy in their role, those guys were actually let down by LeBron and AD. And that's a pretty rare thing, particularly with LeBron and I guess really particularly with the supporting cast being all over the place and Russ's, I think very well publicized issues of late. Like LeBron had an absolutely miserable fourth quarter. He was 1 of 10 from the field. He missed 4 free throws. 3 of his 4 turnovers came in the fourth quarter. And, LeBron talking about it afterwards, he said that both this was very unlike him and he didn't feel like himself, but he also credited Golden State. He said they did a very good job on him. He didn't sound, nor should he, particularly worried about this in terms of what it all means. I think he was just pissed at himself at the idea of we had a winnable game that we can use every win we can bank against a really good team. And we didn't get it in large part, being totally honest, because of me.
Yeah.
Like,
look, 9
LeBron
of 20. That's really 9 of 27 for a guy who's been very efficient over the course of this year.
LeBron had a really good first quarter. From there, I thought he played progressively worse until the fourth quarter, where he was, frankly, pretty abysmal.
Yeah.
And AD had a few scattered moments here and there, but he was 16 points on 5 of 13 from the field. He had 3 blocks, but he also had 6 trips to the line 10 trips to the line, in which case he only made 6 of those free throws. He has been miserable, Brian, from the free throw line over the last 4 games, 15 of 29. Over the last 10, which includes some games where we've talked about this, he has been dominant overall. He's only shooting 65% from the line over the last 10. Like, this has been just absolutely unacceptable from Anthony Davis at the line, especially for the Lakers in this game. There's been a theme for them all year. They missed 11 free throws in this game. They were 22 of 33, which obviously is a big difference in this game. They've missed the second most free throws in the league. They are also 7th on the season in free throw attempts, which means they are leaving a boatload of points on the table.
They're a terrible free throw shooting team, and it's not getting any better. I mean, I think LeBron had a bad game. I thought if he hits 4 of his shots out of 10 in the fourth quarter, even if they lose, I think it changes the way you look at the game. It was not his best game in terms of, I think, caring for the ball. A couple really sloppy turnovers and all that. But, again, you can turn that 1 into a 4. Even in a loss, I think it changes the tenor.
If it turns into a 4, they win.
Well, I'm just saying, even if, say, Golden State scored enough points to make it so they still won. Anthony Davis's performance was much more worrisome to me. And let's get to AD next, because LeBron is, I think, earned a little bit of benefit of the doubt in terms of he's going to be LeBron. AD less so, has been much more worrisome over the course of the year, and after a great restart coming back from injury, has slipped back into some of those early season habits. And that is deeply problematic for the Lakers going forward. We'll talk about it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. Okay, we have reached the point now. It is February. People are just tossing their New Year's resolutions out the window. You know why? Because most of them are a pain in the butt, and they're not fun to even attempt.
I had an entire quart of lard today.
Yeah, you know why? Because you looked at yourself in the mirror and you're like, what's the point, man? I'm never going to get fit. But Brian And it really shows you've been paying attention to nothing we've been talking about all season. The answer's right in front of you. It's Built Bars, Brian. Built Bars are the protein bars. They taste like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar, certainly better than lard. Your lard, I guarantee, unlike a Built Bar, not covered in 100% chocolate. Is it?
Nope.
Is it?
It is not.
No, it's not. And you know what? That's why Built Bars taste so great. Most of them contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. Great flavors to choose from: coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, salted caramel, down the line. Maybe they'll come up with a lard flavor. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at built.com.
All right, so here's AD over the last 3 games. 5 of 13 against Golden State on Saturday. That's inefficient and not good. 8 of 11 against Portland in the loss there, and 8 of 10 against Milwaukee in that blowout. Which is the number that bothers you? Because I can tell you which number bothers me. It's the attempts. 5 of 13, 8 of 11, 8 of 10. That is not enough from Anthony Davis in terms of shot attempts. I mean, LeBron taking 27 is too many. And that's, a little beyond what he normally does, and it's not efficient enough and all that stuff. Anthony Davis needs to take more than, an average of 11 and a half shots a game over the last 3. And, when you go back to those games that he was dominating, it was 19, 24, 18, 20, 21. I would rather see Anthony Davis go 6 of 24 than 8 of 10. It's like, they need him to be more present and, involved in the offense. And whether or not, Andy, that is a function of Frank Vogel or a function of Anthony Davis, or probably a little bit of both, to whatever degree it's Anthony Davis needs to fix it.
Yeah, there have been some times where it's felt like the offense is being run in ways that aren't totally involving AD, where he's going back to floating out on the perimeter a little bit more than you would like, and that some passiveness is coming into this, whether it is, again, because of what they're doing or AD kind of putting that upon himself.
Well, it's hard to tell. It's like it's very chicken and egg sometimes.
Yeah,
and of how it goes.
And in this game against the Warriors, it was also really interesting in terms of trying to figure this out and tricky, because this was the best the Lakers have looked in half-court sets in quite some time, maybe the entire season.
I agree.
So,
and they were smart about it too. They posted up LeBron. They posted up Russ. They posted up AD. They took advantage. It's actually one of the games where I really thought they smartly took advantage of their size.
Yeah, and I asked Vogel about that after the game, and he said that heading into Golden State was a rare opportunity that they actually had to practice, and that they worked specifically a lot on spacing and screening and having really working on the execution of their offensive game plan, which, again, was really good in terms of those half-court sets that typically are where the Lakers are at their worst. But the flip side of that is some of what they were running by design, like you said, if they're posting up LeBron, posting up AD, it may involve AD posting up LeBron, posting up Russ, I should say, might be involving AD a little bit less. So on one hand, it was looking good. On the other hand, the byproduct seemed to be Anthony Davis involved less. But just the last few games in general, I don't know if he was sort of caught up in the general malaise of this team, or maybe he's starting to feel some fatigue after going as hard as he had, having been away, with
which
happens.
The knee issue. That is a very normal
whatever
reaction.
It is. Whatever it is, they need him to get back to looking like that dude. Just one more game, then he gets the entire All-Star break off, and he can truly recharge. But against Utah, if they're going to try to get a win on the board before they break, he's got to play better than this. The flip side, though, Brian, if we're looking for some positive trends, maybe to build on from this game, Russell Westbrook, who everyone is always worried about 24/7, after a really rough first quarter where he had a few bad shots, he had a few defensive lapses that were just him ball watching or him not getting back enough. One of them was there was one occasion.
Russ doing Russ stuff.
Yeah, Russ doing Russ stuff. There was one occasion where he he had missed a layup, and then he was really supposed to be marking Kuminga, who had an unbelievable game.
Man, does he look
And
good. Ooh,
Kuminga
he
just
looks
got
good.
past him easily in transition. But as the game went along, Russ got a lot more locked in on both sides of the ball. And I'm not going to lie, I had been concerned that this was going to be a game where Russ kind of checked out. And it was the absolute obvious. And Vogel praised him a lot after the game. Russ seemed really happy with his own results after the game.
And I think, we speculated for Thursday's show last week, after the deadline, like one of the silver linings is that potentially, I'm sorry, for Friday's show, that like not doing anything at the very least puts the issue to bed. And, THT had a good game. You could say it was because of the deadline. He actually had a pretty good game his couple games before. He's played definitely sort of playing better. But I'm sure it helps to just have that off the table for a little while. But the guy who benefits the most is Russ, and it's not because we're going to stop asking questions about the fit, and we're not going to stop asking questions about each performance. And there's going to be another game where he sits, and I'm old enough to remember, Wednesday, whatever it was, when Russ was like, "Yeah, my back hurts because I'm sitting for longer stretches of games than I'm used to." Not a terribly subtle reference to Frank Vogel and the coaching staff, but it does change the context. It legitimately changes the context that at least until the summertime, Russell Westbrook is going to be a Laker. He's not going to be traded for John Wall. They don't have to decide whether or not they're going to, throw in a first round pick. And for better or for worse, this is the team. Russ is here and he's staying here. And I realize it doesn't take all of it away, but I do think that context change matters, and it is significant, and at least opens the door for a bit of a refresh and a bit of a restart to what has been we'll say, tension-filled last couple weeks.
Yeah. I mean,
controversial couple of weeks.
Russ is so damn mercurial that I'm not assigning any conclusion to any of this.
Oh no, nobody's out of the woods here. All I'm saying is there's the potential for a restart.
I know you're not. I'm just pointing that out. Like Russ, the temperature with him, on the court, personality wise, all of it goes so up and down so constantly that there's no point in reading too much into this or making anything declarative with a conclusion. But I like the idea that he seemed satisfied with what happened after this game. Like he seemed at peace with a lot of stuff. I think this had been weighing on him. As much as I'm not sure how he takes in everything that's going on with him right now, but the idea that that you really pushed hard to land into this situation that was, about playing for your childhood team and at home, and that you could end up getting traded mid-season in a salary dump for the dude that you've already been traded for.
Right.
Like that's a lot to be
major. These are very proud.
It would be humiliating. It would be straight up humiliating.
And guys need to, sublimate your ego to win, okay, fine. I get all that stuff. But they are not robots. And most of these guys get where they are. They get to the level that they are in part because they have incredible, unshakable belief in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been bad for Russ's ego. And I don't mean that in a kind of surface level, get over yourself kind of thing. I think really deep and meaningful ways of, where you're thinking about your mortality as a basketball player. And again, this is all these guys have done from Russell Westbrook has been doing this since he was 7. They don't know anything else because it takes that much to get to this level. And while it would be great if guys would just do the right thing, it ain't that easy.
No.
And the scenario that you were talking about, that by the way still could happen this summer, is deeply humiliating. I think that is a good way of putting it. And to at least have that off the table for 3 months will help.
Well,
And will help if he plays like he did on Saturday.
Well,
7 of 13 from the floor. Only took 2 3-pointers. Kept the turnovers down and all that stuff. It was a very responsible Russell Westbrook game.
Well, here's the thing too, in terms of something that you and I have talked about a lot during the season and that we haven't always agreed upon, but you saw evidence of it in this game. Russ was really engaged on both sides of the ball, and he was paying attention to details on both sides of the ball. And again, outside of a first quarter where he was pretty bad and I was concerned about a spillover effect, he was locking into the things that he's supposed to do. And it's nothing else to me, a reminder and evidence that if he wants to do those things, he can. It is not always going to be perfect, and I don't expect him to, by the end of this season, turn into Matisse Thybulle. But there is a lot of stuff that if he gives a crap to do it, he can do it. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. And a lot of this is just, do you give a crap about it enough to do it?
I think there are nights when he does, and I think the discipline that he doesn't have and the skill set that he doesn't have is actually being able to do that every night. But we'll see. And that to me is a skill that a lot of players just don't have, where they can do the discipline to do it night to night. They have the discipline to do it, where they don't have the discipline and to do it every night. But we'll see. Certainly Saturday was
Russ is not
encouraging.
the most disciplined player on the planet to begin with.
Correct. So we'll see. And we'll look at that. I have a quick word on the LeBron milestone sort of that was kind of constructed for him for Saturday's game, and then we'll get into the Goran Dragic buyout market sweepstakes, currently the biggest name on the market. We'll do all that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. Football may be over for the season. Congrats to the Rams and to Travis Rogers, the host of Locked On Rams. Make sure you listen to him today to get a breakdown of just history being made in Los Angeles. But basketball, full swing for the pros and college hoops. So for all the latest odds, totals, player performances, props, etc., to where the next fired coach is going to land in whatever sport, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right down to Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the games start.
And I do want to note both, because LeBron James is passing different people, all the time now. We're just rocketing up.
We covered Kobe during this period where every game Kobe played was a new record, a new milestone. And Kobe obviously was somebody that truly appreciated basketball history. And, he was a junkie for this stuff. So, he obviously understood the significance of all these things. But there were occasionally times where, like, you'd ask Kobe about this after the game, and you could tell, as hyper aware of everything in his career that Kobe was. There were times where you're genuinely like, really? That just happened?
There's too many of them. LeBron, it's the same thing. We also forget these are people who have been getting awards and piling up accolades for 20 years. It is easy to lose track. The one he passed on Saturday, I just thought was weird because it was such an odd framing. It was both simultaneously incredibly impressive, but also too felt like an engineered talking point. It was most points in his career combined, playoffs and regular season. He passed Kareem. And I said to myself, God damn, that is really impressive. Also, nobody ever talks like that. Nobody ever puts that together, like career, playoffs, and regular season. Maybe we should. Maybe we should have been doing this for years, but nobody ever does. And so I was just like, wait, this one feels like we're making it up so we have something to talk about on Saturday.
Okay, let me ask you this. If the Lakers were better, like if say they were a 4 seed, Do you think anybody would have noticed this with LeBron or been
Well,
looking
yes,
for it?
I think it would have been brought up, but I don't think it would have been quite as. I do think there was slightly a concern of like we need to find something to cling to here.
Well,
Just thought it was one of those things, and we don't have to dwell on it. It was there are. You're right. It's because there are so many of these things, and he passes this guy, and he passes that guy, and obviously when he passes Karl Malone, he's got like 400 points to pass Karl Malone, and he's probably going to pass Kareem at some point next year. He's averaging 29 points a game at 30. I always forget, is he 36 or 37?
He is 37.
That is really impressive. He's 37. He's averaging more, like 29 points a game. That is amazing. But I just was like, God, that is really amazing. And I feel like we just made that up as a TV event.
Do you know when, Brian, the last time LeBron averaged 29 points per game was?
Oh, probably a decade ago.
I'm looking at it right now. The 2009-2010 season, he averaged 29.7. Wow. This is the most points he has averaged in 12 years.
Andy, he'd be able to get more points if he had maybe a little bit more help at point guard. And speaking of which, reports are that
this is, oh my God, this is the fourth highest average of his career right now.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kobe before. There's a little bit of that with LeBron, where like he's been so good for so long that you just kind of forget. Like when Kobe had that streak where he averaged like 50 points a game for like a month and a half.
2006 season.
Right. And like he then, kind of cooled off and had like 2 games in a row where he was at like 34. Mm-hmm. You're just like, all right. Well, by like the 8th game in a row where he scored 50, you're like, okay, what else?
We've told this story before, though, but this is one of the things that always stands out to me with 81, because you and I were in the building when that happened. During that game, going into halftime, what felt like the story was the Lakers are going to crap the bed and lose to this awful Raptors team.
Right.
And, they are trying to jockey for playoff positioning, and Kobe is carrying these dudes as much as he possibly can. And he had something like 27 at the half. And it felt like he was settling in for like a 45, maybe 50-point game. But for Kobe in that moment,
right, literally nobody's impressed by that.
Because
the fact that Kobe's on pace to finish with like 54 points, you're just okay.
No, that in and of itself didn't feel noteworthy. And then I remember you and I, like, as they started getting back into this game, all of a sudden one of us looked at the other and was like, oh my God, do you realize how many points Kobe has? Like,
but it's also the threshold. Like when you go back, like for Kobe to get your attention with the amount of points he has, he needs to get to like 60. And then you start to notice he's got a lot of points.
Yeah. I just like one of us noticed in the third quarter, like, oh my God, have you looked at where Kobe's at?
Pretty good.
Pretty
good.
But
right,
you get spoiled.
So Woj reports that the Lakers are going to be very aggressive in going after Goran Dragic, who is presumably expected to be bought out very quickly by San Antonio, where he was traded on the deadline day last week. Good. I mean, I'm very curious as to what aggressive means. Like, where are we on the Goran Dragic buyout market?
I mean, looking at where the Lakers are right now, aggressive to me feels like they're going to kidnap Goran. They're just going to show up one day and put one of those black hoods over his head and like shove him in a car trunk and keep him there until basically there's like 15 minutes until the buyout market where you can sign with a playoff team ends. Right now, there is nothing compelling. I don't care how aggressive you are. I don't care if you start stalking Goran Dragic. I don't care if you stand outside his window with a boombox playing In Your Eyes. I don't know what the appeal is right now if you're Goran Dragic.
Well, this is part of the issue that we covered on last week after the deadline, was just that this idea that Lakers could go ahead and be aggressive on the trade market. I mean, if you're a ring-chasing veteran, and presumably that is what Goran Dragic is, I mean, I know I said I thought they played better on Saturday. I'm not willing to say they're a top flight destination because he's going to have a lot of suitors. And yeah, well, let's see. I mean, I think this is where Tuesday, and kind of we can finish here. We'll have more time to talk on Tuesday's show about this kind of stuff too. where I think the sort of moral victory stuff starts to matter is like, even if you're not winning all the time, they have the hardest schedule of any team that's left in the NBA. All they do is play Utah and Golden State and, every contending team. They got a couple, I think they got at least one game left against Phoenix. They see a couple decent Eastern Conference teams. Like they have a brutal schedule. And if they look competitive in these games, even if they don't win them all, if they look competitive, they have a chance to maybe show some of these guys, whoever they may be, that, okay, you know what? They're not that far away. I could help this team. And they really do have a prayer. So that's where games like Saturday
Sure.
matter, because the standings, again, it's probably 8 or 9. It matters. Win once versus win twice. I am not soft pedaling the difference between, but there's no like rip off 15 games in a row and we can get up to the 4 spot. Like, no, nobody should be talking like that. If it happens, great. It's probably not. Just play better. Look like a competent team. Look competent against Utah on Tuesday. Come out of the break. Look competent against the teams that you're playing. Like a team that could win a couple games in a playoff series. And now maybe you can attract a buyout guy. Maybe. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, maybe. They've
Or go back to plan A.
Well, this is
trunk.
Yeah. I mean, they've put themselves in a really bad situation in terms of trying to get dudes on the buyout market. I mean, I actually think it's one of the reasons that they didn't cut anybody from the roster. I am not sure they are expecting to get guys on the buyout market anyway.
Or that there are going to be that many guys worth getting.
Right. Well, but if there's no reason to cut a guy and still pay him if you don't end up filling his spot with anybody anyway.
No, wait until
Yes.
I'm sure they tried to unload people, but
sure. But I'm just saying in terms of outright cutting anyone.
And your incentive to pay somebody, whether it's cash or a second rounder or whatever, to take DeAndre Jordan off your hands is certainly lessened if you don't know who's coming to fill that roster spot. So we'll keep an eye on what that's looking like. A reminder to subscribe to Locked On Lakers on YouTube. We're very close to 5,000 subscribers.
Yes.
That will make us feel very good about ourselves. So if you could help us push past that, we'd certainly appreciate it. Appreciate all the support there. Another reminder to make another Locked On podcast your second listen after making us your first. See everybody Tuesday.